Hello and welcome everyone to today's COP26 event on the market state and trends of biomethane and hydrogen. In today's session, the Gas for Climate Consortium, a group of leading gas TSOs and biomethane associations, will shed light on the most recent market developments along the biomethane and hydrogen value chain, including most recent insights into national strategies and key project highlights. So if we can go to the next slide. If we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So just quickly, before we dive right into the topic, just a quick overview of the agenda. So we will start off with a welcome and introduction, and then dive right into the topic of biomethane, followed by hydrogen. And then in the end, we will have a moderated Q&A session where the Gas for Climate Consortium members and our experts will answer your questions. So without further ado, I would hand it over to Camilla Palladino, Executive Vice President, Corporate Strategy at SNAM. Camilla, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm actually at COP, which is why I'm outdoors at the minute. And it falls to me with great pleasure to welcome you to this event on behalf of the whole of the consortium. So Gas for Climate was founded in 2017. I chaired it right at the beginning, so I remember it well, and it seems like a very long time ago. And I think it was a landmark, the foundation of Gas for Climate, because before Gas for Climate, the narrative around gas was very different. I think Gas for Climate was the first time where we looked at the role of gas, the role of green gas in a net zero Europe, rather than looking at gas as a transition fuel or looking at gas as anything other than a net zero, than a key part of net zero. And if you go on to the next slide, where we look at the reports that the Gas for Climate Consortium published over the years, I think the first one was a seminal report. It was about the value of green gas in the EU net zero strategy. And the report talked about, the vast quantities of green gases that were going to be required, but I think particularly the savings. So there was a figure of 217 billion euros of savings in a high gas environment, an optimal gas environment compared to a minimal gas environment. And I think that really changed the perspective of policymakers and of the industry as well. I think it was the first time that we, that collectively we realized just how important the development of green gas was going to be. And I was just saying, I'm at COP now, and we hear such a lot about hydrogen. I mean, I would almost say this is a hydrogen COP, because it's got such momentum behind it. But I think that report was probably the first time where that sort of thinking was put on the map. And I think another seminal report from the consortium was the European Hydrogen Backbone. That's got a slightly different composition of members. It's a wider, a broader group of members than the original Gas for Climate, and that's focused on infrastructure and focused on trying to put the ideas contained, the vision contained in I suppose in the original Gas for Climate on a map, especially where hydrogen is concerned. And so that report was about where hydrogen was going to be produced, consumed, the scenarios for its development, and what those were going to look like, physically on a map, where the hydrogen would come from, where it would go, and what parts of the infrastructure could be repurposed to carry it. And I think that also, that was another very important report, because it established what a market might look like for gas, and just how important the gas asset was going to be, the infrastructure asset was going to be to establishing it. And if I can just introduce today's session over the next slide, please. So I think today's report represents another step forward, from this original vision about what's actually happening. So the other important, I suppose, key word at COP at the moment is implementation. People are talking about the actual projects that will deliver, what everybody's talking about, the NDCs, the hydrogen ramp up. And so there's a lot of interest in, what's actually going to happen, what's happening now and what's actually going to happen. Also because, as we're all seeing, the focus has moved to the very short term at the moment. 2050 commitments are important, but people are working out how to flex the curve, the sort of the emissions curve to 2030. And if you're looking to, halve emissions by 2030 or then you do need to see how projects are ramping up. And I think in the report, today's session will focus on the content of this report, but in the report, we'll be looking at biomethane, growth prospects, bio-LNG, the 50 gigawatts of hydrogen projects that are already, sort of envisaged, and the impact that this is going to have on the hydrogen cost reduction curve. And a topic that's close to my heart is the emergence of hydrogen infrastructure. And the company I work for, SNAM, has been doing a lot of work on that. We ran a blending trial for 5% hydrogen and then 10% hydrogen, which I think is also useful in focusing the mind on what the infrastructure can do to get the market started. And we run an asset readiness program where we look at which of our assets are already hydrogen ready, and that would be about 70% of our pipelines, which is, again, I think a figure which helps people understand how relatively convenient it is to leverage the gas assets to get this market going. And with that, I might hand back to you and let you get into the report proper. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Camilla, for highlighting again the role of low carbon and renewable gases in a net zero energy system. So now we actually want to dive right into the topic. So what's the latest on biomethane? What are the latest key projects? And here I want to hand over to my colleague from Guidehouse, who is the supporting partner of Gas for Climate, David Graf, who will present the most recent findings along the biomethane value chain. So I'll hand over to you, David. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Matthias. As you already said, I'd like to focus on some key aspects that we had on biomethane, starting with supply, going over to infrastructure and demand. And at the end, I'd like to point out some of the national strategies. So let's go to the next slide, please. I'd like to start with the supply side. Next to general trends that we see in the upgrading technology or in pre-treatments for anaerobic digestion, here I'd like to focus on the general increasing biomethane production that we currently see in Europe. On the left-hand side, you see the number of biomethane plants with data provided by EBA, according to their statistical report being published later this month. We see that the number of biomethane plants is continuing to grow over the last years. And as of August this year, we already see an increase of 13%. So at the end of the year, we expect that the increase will be around 20%, so close to the years before. On the right side, we see how these plants that we currently have are distributed over the countries. What has to be mentioned is that France is now leading in number of biomethane plants. The last years, Germany was always leading, but due to a strong uptake, France now took the lead because they installed around 19 new plants this year and 19 new plants last year. But in total biomethane production, Germany still led last year with 11 terawatt hours of production, followed by Denmark with 4 terawatt hours. And then on third place, there is France with 2 terawatt hours. But of course, due to the strong increase in number of plants, it is expected that France is taking up here too. So let's go to the next slide, please. Here we focus on the infrastructure. Currently, around 50% of all biomethane plants in Europe are connected to the gas distribution grid. which could lead to some problems if the supply of biomethane is way higher than the demand, because the distribution net is not feasible to take up the surplus of biomethane. Therefore, such reverse flow facilities are installed. These facilities allow physical gas transport from the distribution to the transmission grid, and therefore a surplus of biomethane can be transported long distance through the transmission grid. On the right-hand side, we see that the deployment of reverse flow facilities is increasing, clearly led by France. They plan to have around 60 reverse flow facility in operation until 2028. One last point that might have to be mentioned here is that due to the strong differences in the national grid infrastructure, reverse flow is not needed for all countries. For example, if the distribution grid is well interconnected and is feasible to take up a lot of more biomethane, then these reverse flow facilities are not especially needed. Let's go to the next slide, please. Here I'd like to focus on the demand. We see an increasing demand in hard to electrify industries, and also a demand in biogenic CO2, which is becoming a high value feedstock. But here on this slide, I'd like to point out the increasing adoption of biogenic compressed natural gas and biogenic liquefied natural gas used in the road and maritime transport. First, to match supply and demand, we need an infrastructure, of course. And on the left-hand side, we see that the infrastructure for CNG and LNG refueling stations is increasing over the years, which is important for the biogenic CNG and LNG, of course, since due to the similar chemical structure, the biogenic feedstock can be blended and therefore decrease the carbon footprint of the CNG and LNG used. Sorry. On the right-hand side, we see that the supply of biogenic LNG is increasing too, which is clearly driven by an increase in demand. We see that currently the number of new bio-LNG plants is doubling each year. And what has to be mentioned is that the production capacity is even scaling up further. So in 2 years from now, so in 2023, the capacity for bio-LNG is expected to be 8 times higher than it is today, which clearly points out that we have a demand in biogenic fuel, and this is met with an increase in supply too. In the end, on the next slide, I'd like to focus on the national strategies and biomethane targets. The Gas for Climate member states have different funding schemes in place to support the biomethane production. We see different kinds like feed-in premium or feed-in tariff, for example. Just in Greece, there currently is no funding scheme in place, and the Spanish strategy is still under consultation, but it's planned to be published soon. Next to the funding schemes, the biomethane targets, of course, differ strongly per country. In total, we have around 110 terawatt-hours of biomethane targeted by the member states. Additionally, so on top, there are 15 terawatt-hours of biogas target, including biomethane in Sweden. And in Germany, there is a biomass target, including biogas and biomethane of 60 terawatt-hours. So to compare the number of 110 terawatt-hours that is targeted, under current support policies, the IEA expected that the demand might be around 140 terawatt-hours in 2040. But due to the fast development in this field, the demand is expected to be even higher. Therefore, the targets are not feasible to match this demand. That's it from my side. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'd like to hand back to Matthias.
Thank you very much, David, for highlighting the strong growth across the entire biomethane value chain, so both on the production side, but also on the demand side, and also on the infrastructure side. So now that we've seen the figures, I would like to actually hand over to the developers of key projects. And first, I would like to hand over to Lorenzo Maggioni from the Italian Biogas Association, Consortium Biogas, who will present the biogas project, Biogas Vita. Lorenzo, the floor is yours. If you can go to the next slide, please.
Many thanks, Matthias. Good morning, everyone. It's really a pleasure to participate in this event. So Biogas Vita is a company located in Vipiteno, Trentino Alto Adige region in the heart of Italian Alps. Biogas Vita involves around 100 dairy cow breeders operating in the higher Isarco Valley that every day deliver manure for biogas production. The biogas plant started producing renewable electricity in 2016 with an installed power of 1 megawatt. The new project is based on a total conversion of existing biogas plant to biomethane and on the increasing of the size of the plant from 1 megawatt to 2.5 megawatt equivalent. The biomethane plant produces 11.5 tons per day of bio-LNG. Due to the Italian laws, and in particular to the decree 2 March 2018, the bio-LNG is used 100% as an advanced biofuel for the transport sector. Part of it is sold in a refueling station directly connected to the production plant owned by Biogas Vita, the rest to other refueling stations. The bio-LNG will be used as a carbon-neutral fuel by heavy-duty trucks, and this biofuel drastically reduce local pollutants to less 70% NOx and less 99% fine dust. The separated biogenic carbon dioxide is not emitted by the plant, but it is liquefied to be used in a food and beverages industry and to produce dry ice. Thanks to the support of an European LIFE-funded project, Biogas Vita has also built an innovative treatment plant for the digestate. In this plant, they use a system that extracts water from liquid cow manure and that purify it. After this treatment, the water enters into the Isarco River, and after the digestate is dried and pelletized and sold as a fertilizer for organic agriculture. So this is what I wanted to say about Biogas Vita. So thank you very much for your attention, and goodbye.
Thank you very much, Lorenzo. So I want to just hand over right next to Grégory Bugler from the French TSO Terega. Grégory, you're up next.
Thank you, Matthias. Thank you for highlighting this project of Terega handled by Terega Solution and Dual Meta, which is the developer of this technology. And the strawberry project has two sides of innovation. The first one is on the technical side, where you can see that the unit is designed in order to combine liquid and solid digestion. As you can see, there are 8 different compartments in circle around the digester, which allows to reduce significantly the preparation steps of the feedstock thanks to a full immersion within each compartment. The design also, you can see that the compartments and the digesters are semi-buried into the ground, which allows to reduce first the visual impact of the unit, which can support the acceptance of the inhabitants around the units, but also reduce the losses of heat that can occur during the process, and which also in parallel increase the efficiency of the methanization process. And we expect to have more than 90% in only 20 days of the feedstock methanized at the end of the process. So that's for the technical aspect. Just one word: this pilot is not built yet. Construction phase has started recently, and we expect to inject the first molecule into the grid in November 2022. The second innovation consists in the financial aspect. The idea behind this project is to reduce the risk associated to the financing of the operational and capex related risk. And the way we are going to propose this solution on the market is based on the scheme of a lease that will be done to the farmers for the 15 years period, while the farmers will keep the operational control of the unit. The idea behind is to lower their financial exposure, and after the 15 years period, they will be able to either leave the unit or take full control of it and the property of it. So in terms of volumes, we are in the range of, for this specific pilot, 10K ton of feedstock per year, but we can go up to 15. Which represent around 15 gigawatt hour per year of biomethane injected into the grid. And that's pretty much it, Matthias, for strawberry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gregory, for presenting this very exciting project. So now up to our very last biomethane project, and here I would like to hand over to Harmen Decker from the European Biogas Association. If you can go to the next slide, please. Harmen, the floor is yours.
Yeah, good morning, and thank you, Matthias. It's a pleasure to present actually this fully industrial and fully circular project all at the same time, which will be the largest biogas production site within Europe, at least for the coming years. It took a few years of planning, I have to say. Hearing from the owners of this system, they will start actually building in February 2022, so in a couple of months' time, with a installation which will produce closely to 12,500 cube an hour of biogas, all renewable energy coming from mainly manure. And it's producing a gigantic number of energy, 592 gigawatt hours. But the beauty of it is basically it's a combination of both renewable energy as well as producing pelletized organic fertilizers. And on top of that, also liquid fertilizers in form of ammonia water. Beside that, they produce also a lot of clean water as well. And to make it complete, they also liquefy the biogenic CO2, which is then sent to the industry and the greenhouses nearby. So it is the first of its kind within Europe. Large, very large scale biogenic or biogas production. And placed in Germany, already the heart of the biogas sector within Europe. It is a promising way how the biogas sector is going forward. And I would like to leave it at that. Thank you, Matthias.
Thank you very much, Harmen. So indeed, very impressive project, very large scale, and it clearly highlights kind of proves the trends that were presented earlier by David, that we see a really, really strong growth in biomethane across Europe. And with that, I would actually like to jump to our next topic, our next renewable gas, which is hydrogen. So in our next session, we will start off with the key trends that we've identified from this year on the topic of hydrogen, and then similar to biomethane, then have key showcase projects that make it a bit more tangible on what's actually happening on a project field. So here I would like to hand over to my colleague Jaro Jens, also from Guidehouse. Jaro, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Matthias. So today I will be presenting the key trends and market developments of the green and blue hydrogen sector. I will, just as the biomethane section, start off with the supply, then move to infrastructure, then demand, and then finally touch upon the national strategies and electrolysis targets by 2030. First, on the supply, we have really seen a lot of developments the past year. The green hydrogen pipeline is truly skyrocketing. Already 50 gigawatts of green hydrogen projects have been announced to be in operation by 2030. This is 25% more than EU's target. And of course, there are a lot of projects still to be announced, especially in, for example, Italy and France. We expect more projects to be announced. And you see like countries as the Netherlands, Spain, Denmark and Germany, where 11, 6, 5 and 5.4 gigawatts of projects have been announced, which is more than their national targets even. So we do see the vision that has been set out at Paris of the large expected role of green hydrogen. We see it now moving to implementation with these gigawatt projects announced. And additionally, I would like to mention that the HyDeal project, which is more of an ambition, but that ambition aims for 67 gigawatts of hydrogen production in Spain by 2030. And this is not even on the map. And we'll certainly see developments on that soon. And then on the next slide, I would like to relate to that, the electrolyzer manufacturing. So the electrolyzers are used to produce the green hydrogen, and seeing this 50 gigawatt target, the 50 gigawatt of projects announced, only in Europe, we need large scale electrolyzer manufacturing. And the electrolyzer OEMs, so the electrolyzer manufacturers, have, I think, gone up with this and taken this very seriously. And in the past few months, I think when I started writing this report, the figure was at 9 gigawatts electrolyzer manufacturing capacity by 2025. And at the end, we were at 20 gigawatts per year. So in just a month, ThyssenKrupp, for instance, Siemens, but also Enapter, smaller companies like Enapter and Sunfire, all announced electrolyzer gigafactories. So electrolyzer manufacturing is, by 25 already for all technologies expected to move to industrial scale. And on the right-hand side, you see all the companies that made up these announcements, and they cover all 4 technologies, which are the more mature technologies: alkaline electrolysis and PEM, proton exchange membrane electrolysis, but also high temperature electrolysis or solid oxide electrolysis, and anion exchange membrane, which is mostly produced by Enapter. And on the next slide, we see with increased manufacturing and increased deployment of green hydrogen that the high learning curve, which we see for foresee for electrolyzers, will lead to a almost halving of the capex, so the investment cost of electrolyzers. And this will cost, if you look at the right hand side, you see a figure of an illustrative example of what we think can happen in the coming 5 years. So the difference between a project deployed today and a project deployed in 2025, we see 30%, a total of 36% cost reduction potential. And starting, of course, with the capex reduction, but there's also technological developments, but also the market certainty, of course, will drive down cost of capital, and balance of plant and EPC costs, which are now can go up to 20,000 euros per kilowatt of electrolyzer, are expected to be limited to under 100 or 200 euro per kilowatt, with increased knowledge how to build and how to engineer a large scale electrolyzer plant. Moreover, there's the technological developments. So a real key trend we're seeing in the electrolyzer sector is a move to increase operating pressures. So today, most electrolyzers produce at atmospheric pressure. And this means that a lot of the times, end users, but also if you put it in a pipeline or storage, you would need higher pressure. But there's a significant advantage, efficiency, and in terms of costs, to have the electrolyzer process operate at maybe 30 bar or even moving to 70 bar. And especially when we foresee offshore electrolysis happening soon, we definitely need, we don't want compression stations offshore separately. So we might even see electrolyzers producing at 70 or 80 bars. And this also touches upon the second trend we're seeing is the integration with the renewable energy source. And especially in Northwestern Europe, we see projects like Aquaventus, which plans to massively produce hydrogen offshore that integrates green hydrogen production with offshore wind. But also in Spain, we see developments by Enagas, which is one of the Gas for Climate members, to integrate hydrogen production with solar PV. And next to this, we've also touched upon the upcoming technologies, such as high temperature electrolyzers, which have higher efficiency, or the anion exchange membrane, which doesn't use the iridium, which is a precious metal and expensive. So that's a cost reduction and also very flexible electrolyzers. Then on the next slide, I'd like to move to the developments around infrastructure, which are of course led by the Gas for Climate members themselves, and we'll touch upon this in the specific project section after this too. So we see a lot of the, so on the right-hand side, first of all, you see the vision. So the European Hydrogen Backbone Vision we've set out last year. And we really see this vision is becoming reality pretty soon. We've seen in the Netherlands, for instance, that the Dutch government will allow GasUnie to make the first steps to build that hydrogen infrastructure. But we also see a lot of projects being selected as IPCEIs, a lot of infrastructure projects. And next to this, another very important aspect of a future hydrogen economy is storage. So we think storage, and I think there's a lot of studies confirming this, that underground hydrogen storage is vital for our future hydrogen system, but also our future energy system to balance variable green hydrogen production. And we see several trials along all geologies. So for instance, lined hardboard caverns in North Europe, so in the Nordics, but also salt caverns, which is already proven at large, which are already proven storage technologies at large scale, but also depleted gas fields and aquifers. And these we foresee at the seasonal time scale, at least, we foresee that those are definitely cost competitive at 60 cents per kilo of hydrogen. And next to that, the compression topic, I shortly already touched on that. So hydrogen compression is energy intensive. So there are also a lot of developments around this topic. For instance, Siemens is working on large-scale centrifugal compression, while we see in Australia, Fortescue Future Industries working on efficient electrochemical compression, and in Germany, the TSOs are working on diagram compression. So looking at new, efficient, and cheaper technologies to compress hydrogen at large scale, which is needed to transport and to store the hydrogen. And then on the next slide, we move to the demand sector. And we really see a large future demand expected. And this is, I think also moving to implementation. There are, for instance, in the steel sector, I would like to highlight this with this slide. And you see the table on the right-hand side. In total, 35% of current capacity have announced to switch to hydrogen-based steelmaking. So this could lead to 80 terawatt hours of hydrogen demand. And just to put it in perspective, that would need all of the offshore, 2 times more than all of the offshore wind parks installed today in Europe. So this, just to understand the magnitude of this, it's huge. And next to this, we also see a quota for in the Fit for 55 package in Europe, which leads to basically guaranteed green hydrogen demand. So there's a 50% green hydrogen quota or mandate by 2030 in Europe. Then next to this, we also see a lot of developments in e-fuels. So at the short term, there definitely isn't going to be electric or hydrogen fuel cell planes. So there's really no other way to decarbonize aviation, but also shipping without e-fuels. So these e-fuels could, for instance, be e-methanol, e-kerosene, but also e-ammonia. So there are several targets, both EU-wide, but also, for instance, in Germany, there's 2% targets, but we also have seen industry pledges. For instance, last week, Nike, Amazon, IKEA announced that from 2040 onwards, they will only ship products using shippers who are completely green, of carbon neutral. So you can imagine this will help accelerate market, and yeah, a switch to e-methanol is, for instance, here expected, and this is led by the largest shipper worldwide, which is Maersk. And this will all have a large impact on hydrogen demand. And we foresee, really an acceleration and an implementation of these hydrogen-based fuels, and therefore an increase in hydrogen demand. And then moving to the last slide, which is on the national hydrogen strategies. Here we see, as already touched upon in the first one, that there's the EU 40 gigawatt target, but there's also all EU member states, almost all of them have published targets of their own. And yeah, as shown in the first slide, these targets there are already more projects announced than these targets by 2030. So as you see on the right hand side, these are the targets in gigawatts by 2030. And yeah, the countries like the Netherlands, Germany, and Spain, there are more projects announced than targets, than the target has been set. But also still several strategies are under development, like in the Nordics or Central Eastern Europe. So yeah, and in summary, we think that green hydrogen and blue hydrogen market is really accelerating. I think this is aligned with the vision we set out in Paris, and now we're all moving to implementation in Glasgow. We definitely see that the trends are in line with the pathway needed to get to net zero by 2050. Thanks, and give the word back to Matthias.
Thank you so much, Jaro, for sharing the latest insights on hydrogen. And similar to biomethane, we want to now substantiate those trends with actual projects. And first off, I want to hand over to William Rehain from French TSO Terega. So if you can go to the next slide, and the floor is yours, William.
Yes, thank you. Yes, so this project, like hydrogen, is clearly the current topic of what we are today. In fact, it's and also regarding the new report of the French electricity TSO, RTE, which has just publishing its future energy mix. In fact, even with nuclear and new nuclear plant in France, we will need several new thermal power plant, a new low carbon thermal power plant. So like hydrogen is this kind of project. In fact, Gazelle Energy, partner of the project, has got many fossil thermal power plant with coal and natural gas. And in fact, he wants to switch or to build low carbon thermal plant, because of course the main topic we will have regarding the energy mix and I would say mainly the electricity mix is to have renewable electricity fully dispatchable and at competitive price also, obviously. And like hydrogen project is this kind of project, I would say maybe the first of a kind, because it's at scale, at large scale, because to get competitive price, we need to be massive and large scales. And the idea of this one is regarding France and the south of France. We've got Spain, which is developing a large production of renewable hydrogen. And they will get some excess of renewable hydrogen, mainly in summer. And what can we do regarding infrastructure to transport and to store this renewable hydrogen, because we will mainly produce in summer. And the aim to this project is to produce renewable electricity, and mainly this renewable electricity will be consumed during winter, when renewable electricity, I would say, it will be less available. So this is this kind of project, and we deal with with this matter of what kind of infrastructure we can make. So we look at competitive price. So we try to repurpose gas pipeline. We try to use existing natural gas storage to store this hydrogen. So there is a lot of innovation, in fact, regarding this project. But we are not so far. We are at the time being studying the feasibility of this kind of project to, I will say, to get a more precise estimation of the cost, what could be done regarding this project. And it's, well, this project has been applied last year, because we started this project last year, has been applied to the IPCI application, and it's quite also, get the figure here, it's quite also representative, a big amount of saving regarding CO2. We will save around 1 million tons per year of CO2 at the starting of the project. So I would say it's, and I will stop here, it's quite a very interesting project, first of a kind, which could be, you would say, replicate many times, because about what we hear today about stopping and switch coal thermal power plant, this kind of power plant will be needed in the future to get renewable electricity fully dispatchable. So this is the topic of this project. And if you can ask me more questions after, feel free to ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, William. Very, very, very exciting and very innovative project. So next up, our next key project, if you can go to the next slide, will be presented by Daniel Mutmann from Open Grid Europe. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Matthias, and welcome everybody. Thanks for your interest in our session this morning. I have a privilege of presenting to you the GetH2 project, which basically is the core of the GetH2 IPCEI, which has been shortlisted by the German government for funding under the IPCEI regime. What is it all about? First, if you want to look at the picture on the right-hand side, this is about creating a real tangible and industry-size value chain on hydrogen. The first value chain basically from production via an infrastructure, dedicated hydrogen pipelines, which are made from repurposed existing gas pipelines and a repurposed storage facility, and then connecting actually real industrial off-takers in the field of steel making and refining. Why is this project so important, especially in the German context? Because on the one hand, of course, it's all about CO2 and emission reduction, but it's also about keeping industry value creation in our countries, because we are now, at the moment, Germany is a very large industrial, basically has a large industrial base. And that is something which, of course, poses a number of decarbonization challenges. And we want to be able to basically get those value chains green in order to keep the value creation and not have industries moving away to other regions and basically modernize everything. What kind of scale are we talking about and what timelines? This is about a project which is supposed to start with the first 100 megawatt electrolyzer plant in 2024, and then quickly increasing to 300 megawatts by 2026. And it would basically then connect actual off-takers and have the pipeline ready. Additional features, very important, is a connection, further connection in 2025 to a steel mill from ThyssenKrupp in Duisburg, and a cross-border connection to the Netherlands, which of course makes this a very interesting European project. You will know that on the Dutch side, there's a lot of hydrogen development as well. So basically, it's like a nucleus in the northwest of Europe, from which, of course, you can further expand and develop infrastructure going forward. By 2030, it would extend further into the region of Salzgitter, making this project, as I said, very much in focus at the moment. What needs to be said at the end is that it's very distinguished and powerful partners who teamed up for this project. You see it on the top right corner: BP, Evonik, fellow TSOs, Norvega, ThyssenKrupp, and ourselves, OGE, as well as RWE and Salzgitter. And I can tell you from the project team itself, they have done a tremendous amount of work and prepared themselves and are all ready to go. So I think we're very excited because this is a project which we think is going to be started very soon. And let's face it, as we have heard and are hearing at COP, we've done a lot of studies, we've done a lot of plans. Now it's about implementation. So this project will certainly be an important step forward in introducing the hydrogen economy in Germany and Northwest Europe. Back to you, Matthias. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Daniel, and especially for highlighting the importance of value creation and keeping the value chains in Europe and in Germany. I think that is a very key message here. And then our last key insight project, we can go to the next slide, will be presented by Eric Tamaske from the German TSO Ontras. Eric, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Matthias, and also good morning to everyone. I'm introducing the project Green Octopus Mitteldeutschland. It is a collaboration of the companies Ontras Gas Transport and VNG Gasspeicher. Ontras and also the other TSOs, as we already have heard, want to set up first parts of the European hydrogen backbone. So therefore, they started several projects and a call for important projects of common European interest, IPCEI. This project is also a part of the German shortlist of IPCEI projects. The project Green Octopus Mitteldeutschland is connected to two other IPCEI pipeline projects with Ontras involvement. One is called Live Transport in the Leipzig area, and the other one is doing hydrogen transport, where the main focus is the connection between the German coast of the Baltic Sea and central Germany. So what we want to do in this project is to establish approximately 200 kilometers of pipeline network, both newly built and retrofitted pipelines between the steel mill in Salzgitter on the northwestern part of Germany and the industrial area of Leuna in central Germany. Connected to this pipeline, our project partner, VNG Gasspeicher, will build a 100% pure hydrogen underground storage with 50 million cubic meters of maximum usable working gas volume for leveling the volatile hydrogen production. It is a cavern storage and located at the existing Bad Lauchstädt natural gas underground storage site. We integrate the already started regulatory sandbox Energiepark Bad Lauchstädt in this project, where preliminary actions are carried out, for instance, the repurposing of 200 kilometers of pipeline and the connection to the industrial area of Leuna. So the pipeline network is linked to other infrastructures in northwestern part of Germany and the Netherlands. One connection is one to the GET-H2 project via the Salzgitter steel region. The project was presented by Mr. Mutman in this session before. In a later stage of expansion, there can be links in direction to Denmark, Poland, and the Czech Republic. So what you can see as a result of this project is a pipeline infrastructure and an underground storage that are part of the European hydrogen backbone network. Thank you for your attention, and please don't hesitate to contact me if there's any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric, for presenting this very important infrastructure project. And with that, I want to conclude our hydrogen session and move to our Q&A session. I think we've already received quite a few questions from our audience. If we can go to the next slide, please. We should be able to see them. So if we can scroll up a little, if that's possible. Or I will just, ask the questions right away. So one of the first questions that we got was how CO2 emissions from biomass is accounted for under EU's Fit for 55 guidelines. So here, maybe Harman from the European Biogas Association could provide an answer. Harman.
Thank you, Matthias, and also thanks to Ms. Sharma for the question. So this is actually quite complex answer, because you see in the various legislations within the Fit for 55, the CO2 footprint is being differently perceived. So first of all, I think it's good to say that within the RED 2, you see that the negative footprint we have from the CO2 emissions, say that from biogas, is being recognized in some of the standard values which are already there. However, for example, in the transport, This is not being recognized at all because there is this zero tailpipe approach, although of course we can do better. Now, if you look at the ETS, in the ETS, there is possibilities to go count for negative emissions. We need to work out exactly how that is going to work. At least biogas will be seen as zero emission, but talks are ongoing with regard to the negative part. For example, in the maritime, there is this well-to-wake approach where, of course, the negative part is being put in. And let me just say, it is of the utmost importance that biogenic CO2 is being rewarded with a preferential status in the use of CO2, which we do within Europe. Meaning that when industries or greenhouses are using CO2, the preference should be to use biogenic CO2 at first.
Thank you very much, Harman. So next, I want to actually have a hydrogen-related question, and I see one. What is the average efficiency of electrolyzers, not pilots, today? And maybe, Jaro, you're best suited to answer the question.
Yeah, thank you, Matthias. That's a very good question. The average efficiency of a PEM electrolyzer today is about 60 to 65%, and of an alkaline electrolyzer, well, it's about 65 to 70%. High temperature electrolyzers use steam and can go to efficiencies of 85% even. This is all in lower heating value. But we should also consider efficiency degradation. So with more load hours, electrolyzers, the efficiency degrade. So the average efficiency over lifetime could be about 5 to 10% lower.
Thank you, Jaro. So next, let's have another biomethane question. So there's one that's addressed at Nordfuel. So at a scale like Nordfuel, what are the approximate production costs of biomethane per megawatt hour? And I would say that would also go to you, Harman.
That is a very nice question. Let me first address that with the current natural gas pricing, biogas in all, be it small or large plants, is already cheaper than natural gas at this very moment, of course. Looking at the Nordfuel, actually the price of Nordfuel, I do not know the exact, of course, production cost price. I'm not sure if the owners will actually release that, but we expect that it will be anything between low the 50s, maybe even high 40s per megawatt hour to around about, say, 55 to maybe 60 megawatt hour, depending a little bit on how the financial setup of this installation will be, because as said, there are other products as well where say the operational cost can be written off on as well. But let's say the low 50s per megawatt hours, which is of course one of the cheapest renewable fuels at this moment.
Thank you very much, Harman. So let's have another hydrogen question. So this one is addressed at Mr. Rahine. What are your main challenges to repurpose a porous storage asset for hydrogen?
Yes, good question. In fact, the main challenges is how hydrogen will react with the rock, but also with all the bacteria, because we have bacteria in the underground storage and moreover in aquifer. And so this is the main challenge. But today, R&D works which have been done are quite confident about it. And what is also it is important to know is that in fact we are from the beginning quite confident, because by the past the town gas is content hydrogen, and in France, I will say 60 years or 70 years ago, town gas was stored on the ground in aquifer in France, and for more than 20 years. So for this we are quite confident about it. But the main challenges is because each aquifer is different, And the main challenges today is to know how hydrogen will react with the underground ecosystem, the rock and the bacteria. But today we are quite confident about this.
Thank you very much, William. So next question would be from Obdulio Fanti. The hydrogen from biomass can considered as green hydrogen. So who wants to take that question? Anyone? Harman?
I can if you want, because like hydrogen.
William, yeah, please.
Yeah, because like hydrogen is one kind, but in fact we will have in fact the green electricity, for example. But you have in the north of Europe or the south of Europe, you will have a large amount, large scale production by photovoltaic panels or by wind turbines. So we will have, I will say, a lot of electricity. And today, I think each country and I will say, moreover, European countries like Germany or Spain or Great Britain have a big amount of renewable electricity to be converted into hydrogen, because when you have convert electricity into hydrogen, you can store it and you can also transport in large amount, because it's also one study which has been made with Gas for Climate. Is when you convert electricity in hydrogen, you can transport in large amount, which is I would say easier than with high power grid.
Thank you very much, William. So I see few other questions popping up. One would be, do you see that changing diets will reduce potential use for using manure in the long term? And I think, Harman, you're again best positioned to take that question.
I'm not seeing the question. Oh, there and on top. Well, okay, yes, that is actually a good question, and it will of course reduce the total potential we have on manure, and of course the diets will be improving also with some new proteins coming on the market, which will reduce also the emissions. However, take into account we only use 3 to 5% of the total manure into our biogas production year to date within Europe. I think we have a way to go still.
Okay, thank you, Harman. So the next question would be, how do you estimate water needs and challenges connected to that with growing water scarcity, so to hydrogen production? So if one of our hydrogen experts on the panel could answer this question.
Yeah, I can take this one, Matthias. We could foresee this becoming a problem, mostly in areas, in desertous areas or in the south of Spain. However, there's a potential solution to use seawater, to desalinate seawater. And especially in Northwestern Europe, this is of course possible, but also in Spain, it would be possible to use desalinated seawater. This would, of course, decrease the overall efficiency, but it would limit the impact of large-scale hydrogen production on water scarcity. Next to that, I want to highlight that today hydrogen is produced using steam methane reformers, and these have about the same water demand as an electrolyzer. So the production method change doesn't change the water demand that much. However, we could foresee a lot more hydrogen production, and then we see desalination as the solution.
Thank you very much, Jaro. And with that, I would actually conclude the session. We only have a few seconds left, so I want to thank all the speakers for providing these very insightful market developments on both biomethane and hydrogen. And I wish all a very, very insightful COP and good days. And yeah, let's stay on track to become climate neutral, carbon neutral by 2050. Thank you and have a good day.